Hello again, Pats, pals, and Foxborough friends, the worldwide over of Patriots Nation, and we welcome you to the latest edition of Six Rings and Football Things, a podcast brought to you by WEEI and WEEI.com, Odyssey Sports, and 2400 Sports. I'm your old pal, Nick Fitzy Stevens, joined today by the one and only Mr. at Jumbo Hart himself, Andy Hart. Good morning, Andy. How are you?
Hi, Fitzy. Do I look bright today in my bright orange sweatshirt?
Those of you that are currently watching live across the Fitzy GFY socials can see that I dressed for a Patriots podcast, and Andy Hart looks like he wants to be the assistant offensive line coach for the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, is that the guy that when he blows his whistle, his belly goes up in the air?
That was truly one of the greatest moments in recent what the hell's the name of that show? Hard Knocks. That
Yes.
guy, the big chubby guy from Cleveland at Hard Knocks. That was absolutely spectacular.
The greatest belly we've ever seen until this edition of Six Rings.
Already taking cheap shots across the bow of our friend from Patriots.com. They were formerly cantankerous colleagues, providing you lots of asinine analysis, argumentative ball game talk, Patriots pandering, and so much more. My pal and yours at PFW Paul, the one and only Paul Perillo, joins the pod today. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
I love the Patriots pandering because nobody panders like Andy Hart. That's a great one right there.
I call it positive trolling.
I gave you your lower third.
Positive trolling.
Positive trolling. You are at PFW Paul, the OG of Patriots grumpiness. Of course, he is at Jumbo Hart, the gridiron grump himself. And I'm at Fitzy GFY, here for Mac Jones' big second season. Thank you guys for following along on the podcast, and give us a follow on Twitter at Six Rings Pod. Rate, review, subscribe, and so much more. On today's podcast, we'll have further OTA thoughts as Paul and Andy were down in Foxborough to observe the Patriots' optional training activities, or whatever you like to call it. I get it wrong every time on purpose, just because I like to troll you. I know. No, well, I mean, I'm an idiot in a certain regard, but not necessarily when it comes to doing that. We'll continue the offensive play calling gripes and woes. We'll play a little game called Bigger Impact. We'll take your questions and so much more. Gentlemen, let us begin today by reviewing your thoughts on the second edition of OTAs in Foxborough. I know this one was described as the hungover slap and tickle. There really wasn't much going on. A few notable absences. Paul, what would you say became clearer after you watched the latest edition of OTAs down at Gillette?
That's a great question, because I'm not sure we had a whole lot become clearer. I guess if pressed, I'll say that Bill Belichick continues to be 100% focused on the offense, and that's a little bit of a departure from what we're used to. He usually spreads himself around, and if anything, it's more on the defensive side. But this is twice now we got a chance to watch a practice, and Bill is pretty much 100%, Andy, wouldn't you say, on offense?
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway. Not just that he's there, but sort of the hands-on nature. I blogged something yesterday about, there was that series when I forget who the receiver was, but he was like telling him exactly where he wanted him and how to catch the ball. Then he went back to Bailey Zappi and told him exactly how he wanted the ball thrown. Now, the one thing I will say is I am not beyond questioning Bill Belichick for controlling the narrative with some theater, so to speak. Should we put all the emphasis on Bill as actually running the offense? It's all Bill all the time. Or is this an effort to get idiots like us to say, oh, it's all Bill's offense, and that way we won't spend any time ripping Joe Judge and Matt Patricia when the wheels fall off in September?
Did you hear this? When?
Yeah, when? There's no if to it. He's been so incredibly negative, so much so, Paul, that everyone who knows me as the Foxborough fanboy, as Mr. Positive Patriot, I now am starting to get radiation sickness from just having to do multiple radio shows and podcasts with Andy, to a point where some people think he's coming across as more positive than I am.
See, it's funny. He's blaming
trolling.
Yes. 50 got a hint of objectivity since joining this podcast, and now he blames it on me like it's a bad thing. But no, Paul, is there any chance that, because I think, Florio had that convoluted theory that Bill's doing all this because he should have fired his son, but he's not going to fire his son. So if he can't fire his son, he can't fire anyone, and just puts it all on himself. Everybody's under the umbrella of Bill Belichick's protection, I guess.
I do wonder if there's an ulterior motive there, with obviously he doesn't want to name his son the defensive coordinator. And the whole thing with Mayo and Steve Belichick, and who knows exactly who's in charge. I wonder if maybe he looks at things like that. And it's like, well, I'm not going to name a coordinator, but see, I'm being consistent. I'm not going to name an offensive coordinator either. Obviously, he didn't have that opportunity with Josh McDaniels, who had been here so long. He was clearly the offensive coordinator. I wonder if maybe that's part of the reasoning. And I really don't think, and this is the part where you can call me the positive troll, Fitzy. I really don't think that it matters to him. I think with Bill, they're going to figure out everybody's role, and that's what it is. They don't need to have anybody ostensibly with the title in Bill's mind.
Okay.
I really believe that.
I've been a firm, longtime believer that once you give something a title or you label it and you name it, then you clearly define it, and that's not necessarily all that it can become, but that's just what it is, and it is what it is. You're the offensive coordinator. This is sort of such a massive phase shift of the Patriots, like the biggest year to me in Bill Belichick's 3.0 Patriots, that he just wants football mind that he can trust as he sort of tries to develop what they're going to do next. We know the offense is going to evolve. The defense is going to shift massively. The hand has been tipped on that by flooding the backfield with safeties that can also be linebackers, smaller cornerbacks, etc. So my only concern is that they be organized, obviously productive and watchable, and just clean up the mistakes from aisle 2021. That's my biggest concern. If you don't get punts blocked, you don't have those boneheaded penalties, and guys are where they need to be. That's all I care. I don't care who's called what your fancy title is, your business cards, your lanyard, your little desk marker. Don't care about that. And I don't think Bill does either.
See, I would agree with that if we were talking about a staff that included Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien, Nick Caley, and Charlie Weiss, or like if they were all offensive minds, I'd be like, I don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who gets the blame. I have a lot of faith in their abilities to do the job. They're all great offensive coaches. But that's not the situation. Right now, based on what we've seen, Paul, I would say the hierarchy of Patriots coaching is on offense: Bill Belichick, Joe Judge, Mac Jones, Matt Patricia, Nick Caley. Like that would be my order of operations. And I'm gonna revisit that and say it again. Bill Belichick, known for his defense and a head coach and a GM. Joe Judge, known for special teams and being an a-hole head coach who got run out of town in New York because it fell apart. The wheels fell off.
There was a little hardo tryhardism there, and
a little.
I was being nice. Yeah, he failed miserably because obviously he was not able to learn from the prior mistakes of McDaniels, Patricia et al., who went out and tried to be Bill as opposed to just doing their own thing.
He also failed miserably because the young first-round quarterback that he inherited, who has questionable talent as it is, regressed under his leadership. And now he is inheriting a young first-round quarterback with questionable talent who is under his leadership.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's interesting, I mean, not that we're going to turn this into the Giants podcast, but
we could.
With a guy like Dable, who is coming off a lot of success with a young, sort of unpolished quarterback, it's going to be interesting to see if Daniel Jones makes some strides this year, and then how much that sort of adds to the spotlight on Joe Judge.
And let me ask you a question.
That's a good point,
Daniel
Paul.
Jones teaching Brian Dable the way Mac Jones is?
No, and that's part of it. That, when Mac Jones talked that was the first day we got to go out there. Right. I thought Mac Jones spent a lot of that time, guys, talking about his role in all of this, play calling, structure, whatnot. I don't think that's a really good recipe for success with a young guy. I don't think Tom Brady had that kind of responsibility, in his second year as a starter, and he had won a Super Bowl, coming off that first year in 2001. So I think that's asking a lot of a player.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, Paul, I just want to I don't want to keep being the guy that like bangs the drum and plays the trumpet for what Mac Jones is capable of, not just on the field physically, but as an offensive mind, organizer of team, etc. Don't you think that as accomplished as Tom Brady was by the end of his second season, winning that Super Bowl, obviously he made some massive contributions along the way and steadied the team as he took over for Bledsoe, but that team was so defense driven, whereas I'm not necessarily sure yet which way this team is driven. Is this going to be a more offensive driven team this year? Is it going to be a more defensive driven team? And don't you think that the way that they're organizing things showcases how much trust they feel they can put in Mac Jones's slightly smaller than Tom Brady's hands?
I mean, like I said, I think that's a stretch. I don't think this is about Mac Jones. I think this is about what they have. And I think they're trying to make the best of it. I would say that Belichick's presence with, the construction of everything, the game plans. I think he's always been involved, heavily in offensive and defensive game plans. But this to me is a little different. Andy and I have always been sort of lockstep on, the actual play call, like the play calling itself is a little overrated. But at the same time, you can't just have a guy who's never really had a feel for it just step in and assume that he's going to be great at it. Maybe Joe Judge will be great at it. I thought on Tuesday, I thought we saw more of Matt Patricia with Mac Jones. Now, they were doing a lot more running game stuff. So, Andy tried to get it out of Bill Belichick a little bit with running game coordinator, passing game coordinator. If you're looking from the outside and you're just sort of trying to, connect all the dots, that's what it looks like. It looks like Joe Judge is passing game guy, Matt Patricia is running game guy. I think it can work if those guys are successful, but I think those are big question marks.
Andy, I got 2 reality show based questions that I want to throw at the 2 of you for the Patriots offense. Number 1,
Temptation Island.
Yeah, okay. On this episode of Below Deck New England Patriots edition, I thought I would go the boat way because I know that makes you happy, Andy.
Yes, it does.
Paul, do you think there's any chance that this is an audition to see who should be the play caller? So, are Patricia and Judge and possibly Kaylee auditioning throughout the next couple of months so Bill can get an idea? He wants to set the offense, but he wants to see who he thinks he can trust the most on most Sundays, 1 Monday and 2 Thursdays, I believe. And do you think also there's any possibility that going about putting together an offense like an episode of Chopped where you just here's a couple players, here's a couple coaches who know football, 30 minutes go. Do you think there's any way that can work, or is this a recipe for disaster, Andy?
Yeah, for me, the offense can work. I think, it's going to remain to be seen because I think these guys have a lot to prove because of what Andy said. I mean, one guy has been almost all defense in his career. Another guy has been mostly special teams in his career. I think that's asking a lot. It can work. I think these guys know football. I don't think there's really, anybody arguing and say these guys don't know anything about what they're doing. But I think it's a tough way to put it together. To answer your specific question about the audition, for lack of a better term, I've been on record as saying that Bill knows right now exactly who's going to be calling the plays. But based on the 2 days of OTAs that I watched, I think I might be wrong. I think there might be a little something like that. First of all, it might be more collaborative than I thought it would be. And maybe he is sort of watching these guys and figuring out how it works best and maybe how Mac responds to one or the other. And maybe looks for the comfort there with Mac Jones. I kind of feel like, heading into OTAs, I felt like Bill has told people what's going on. For whatever reason, they don't want to let us know what's going on, but I think Bill knows. But now I'm kind of wondering if I'm wrong about that.
So I have kind of felt all along, at least since the first OTA, that it's Joe Judge's role to lose. That's kind of how I felt. I certainly even kind of felt stronger about that. I don't know if Paul, I'm sure you saw some of the comments from Matt Castle talking about how, 7 teams, 14 years, the play caller was in the quarterback's room. He feels like that person needs to be in the quarterback's room because otherwise there can be a lack of communication. Little things fall through the crack. That guy has to be around the quarterback most of the time. So I still feel like it's Joe Judge's role to lose. Now, I've been trying to take these guys at their word, and Joe Judge was very emphatic when we spoke with the assistants those back-to-back days. Conveniently for us as media, that didn't hurt us in any way. It was very thankful for all of us. When he said, I'm going to be point blank, Bill hasn't declared that. He won't. We don't need to know. There's no egos in this room. When he declares that, we'll move. I'm going to take him at his word. He definitively and very point blank said no one knows yet who's calling plays. I agree with you. I think Bill probably knows whether he's told them or not, whether they're lying or not. I don't know. And I think it's Judge. But Paul, the famous Andy Hart ifs theory, that if you have a lot of ifs, best case scenario, half those ifs turn out for the positive, whatever the number is. Generally, if you have 2 significant ifs, I feel pretty good chance one might be positive. You'll get the upside. You're going to get the downside. Doesn't this offense feel like it's built on a pile of ifs?
Yeah, and you know what? The thing that might be the scariest is I think
built on a pile of ifs.
It's true.
I think there are a lot of ifs. I think there might be fewer ifs on offense than defense. That might be the scariest part.
Really?
You
Wow.
skipped down the legal pad of topics I wanted to talk about with the great Paul Perillo.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I like your Andy and I spend a lot of time together, so we do have.
You guys kind of do have something between like Patriots talk, shorthand, and jazz, which I appreciate as well.
With the ifs though, Fitzy, like I know we focused an awful lot on the offensive coordinator, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be. I think it's an enormous story. I think it's rather unprecedented in the league. I can't think of any team that ever went into a season with uncertainty as to who was going to call plays.
Well, have you ever met anyone who wants to do that differently than Bill Belichick? Bill Belichick continues to either incidentally be or go out of his way to be the guy who does something differently.
Or he's lost his mind at 70.
Yeah, I don't think that he's done a lot of things that have been like this. I mean, I don't really have any. I don't have any comparison to make. But I don't think that it's something we shouldn't be talking about as much. But I think it's sort of clouding what I think is like sort of an average roster.
Yes.
And I look at, Andy talks about all his ifs. The best case scenario is some of those ifs, maybe half of those ifs pan out. Well, I look at what the rest of the league did in the offseason and specifically in the AFC. And for the Patriots, best case scenario is some of those teams, it won't work. That look good on paper right now won't pan out.
Right.
But even if some of them don't, I mean, it's unrealistic to expect all of the teams that made major improvements, Miami, Cleveland, Denver, the Raiders, the Chargers. I mean, it's unrealistic to expect all of those teams to not have it all work out for them. And that, to me, is the bigger issue that the Patriots are facing as they're getting prepared for training camp. Will they have enough on the field, regardless of the coaching? Will they have enough on the field to keep up with some of these teams and make a playoff run?
And you left off one of the teams that I think actually will be in the American Football Conference championship game, the Denver Broncos as well, who may have made the biggest offseason.
As Andy Hart likes to say, gonna need you to listen. I did mention Denver.
Oh, I was listening the whole time. I didn't think I heard Denver in there. I apologize. Maybe I had my own agenda, or I was getting ready to pop up our first viewer question right here, Paul. Nice. I'll take a lap afterwards. James Sneed is watching on Facebook. He says, okay, so every day all fans will hear about is who the OC is going to be. Just like last year, we heard about Cam every day, and he got cut. So could this offensive play calling mystery be a little bit of a smokescreen? That's kind of like, is that kind of your theory, Andy?
Well, it was my theory optimistically as a Nick Caley supporter that the Matt Patricia Joe Judge show was a distraction, kind of like Cam Newton. And then at the end of the day, Nick Caley would just slide right in, call plays, and say, I've been here 5 years. I've been learning from Josh. I'm a system product, all of that. I've kind of lost hope in that area because Nick Caley looks like he's just the tight ends coach.
Question in the back?
Yes, Mr. Perillo, the gentleman at
Bill Belichick had no interest in having Cam Newton be the quarterback last year heading into training camp?
Oh, I think he knew before training camp who the starter was, and it wasn't Cam Newton.
Oh, so you don't think he won it on that famous Wednesday where Mac lit it up against the Giants?
No, I'm on the record. I believe June the 15th it was where I said
that's right.
Mac Jones was the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots.
I think the day that Cam Newton had a missed practice with COVID was the day that Bill Belichick decided he's not going to be here.
Nah,
that's just me personally. I don't think that was much ado about nothing. I think that they were getting a lot of reps. I mean, that's a lot of wasted time for a guy that they didn't think was going to be on the team. That's a lot of reps.
Wasted time with an O-line coach and a quarterbacks coach doing
exactly.
But Andy,
what I'm saying is, I think it's a bad analogy. Like last year we spent all this time talking about but the Cam Newton thing,
literally the worst playground insult I've ever heard. You're a bad analogy.
Wait, Fitzy, you've been working with him for a couple of years now. You haven't heard that caliber of comeback many times?
Honestly, Paul, I used to look fresh as lettuce, and people would ask me all the time, like, Fitzy/Nick, how do you look so young? What's your secret? Ever since I started working with Andy, I look like I looked inside the Ark of the Covenant. I have just aged or I drank from the wrong grail. I've aged like 1,000 years.
Look what 20 years of Paul working with me did. Paul had a full head of hair. It was dark. He was thin. He looked like Nick Caserio when he started working with me, and now he looks like this. That was the before and after. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Here's a fun one, Andy. Our pal Stephen Tower watching from London. Mentally, I'm preparing myself for the season to be 2002 2.0. Do you gentlemen believe that to be a valid comp?
Well,
I know they're not coming off a Super Bowl,
Yeah,
but
no.
Yeah, I thought the 2002 team, I think it was kind of old, and coming off of there were a lot of veterans that they had signed that were kind of coming up. That team just couldn't stop the run, and that ultimately did them in. But I'll tell you this: if Mac Jones plays, a similar caliber season as Tom Brady did in 02, I don't really care what the final record is. I'll take that. I think that would be an enormous sign, a positive sign for the future, because Tom Brady was really good in 02, even though they didn't make the playoffs.
he
Question
threw a lot
for
of picks.
Mandy.
He led the league in touchdowns that year,
Yes.
but he also had a bunch of picks that year. Maybe
Well,
Mac
they weren't
Jones
a great
has-
team, but he showed development. But in Paul's, because that mentality was the mentality I took last year with Mac Jones, was very simply, if you finished the season knowing who your quarterback was, that you had a quarterback, I thought it was a successful season. They mixed in some entertainment factor. They obviously mixed in a playoff berth, which I didn't need as part of my little scenario. How many years can you go with saying, well, if Mac Jones develops and if Mac Jones looks so, like, this is the NFL where teams go worst to first. Teams go like,
I'm just saying, I think Tom Brady was much better in 02 than he was in 01. I think
Agreed.
01, there were a lot of people that felt like, yeah, I mean, they won, but he really handed the ball off the whole time, and they played defense, and a lot of funny things happened. In 02, as Fitzy just said, he led the league in touchdown passes. He threw for over 4,000 yards. You were like, wow, this guy can be more than I thought. If Mac Jones is more than a lot of people think, first of all, if Mac Jones is more than some Patriots fans think, you got a Hall of Famer on your hands.
yeah. Some people have, yes, I would agree. But my point is, like, I'm using this same barometer with Justin Herbert. Sooner or later, Justin Herbert needs to poop or get off the pot and actually make the playoffs. Like, or you're going down.
well,
like
no.
Matthew
That is
Stafford
not
road.
his fault. I don't want to get
Nothing's
my
his fault. He's the quarterback.
PFW dander on.
his
That's
fault.
not his. It's partly his coach is an analytics asswad who couldn't figure out whether he should or shouldn't call a timeout at the end of the season last year, costing them a playoff berth. If anybody carried that team and their deficient roster last year, to which they've made significant upgrades into the offseason, it was Justin Herbert. Dude, if you could pick a quarterback from the AFC to build your team around right now,
Josh
I bet
Allen.
you at least 30% of the people responding, if not maybe over a third, would say Justin Herbert.
He's in the conversation. I think it's Allen, Mahomes, Herbert. But the difference is those two have developed into winners. Josh Allen, when he still sucked, went to the playoffs. He gave us the opportunity to mock his playoff behind the back, whatever, flip of the ball, right? Like, at some point in the National Football League, quarterback is a wins position. It's a playoffs position. It's, do you get your team to the playoffs? Do you get more out of it? That's all I'm saying. And the Mac thing, he's going to face that in the next year or so. Like, I don't think they're a playoff team this year. Vegas doesn't think they're a playoff team, right? They set the over-under at 8.5 wins. Like, they're not seen as a must-win. That's why I've said that Mac has sort of a no-lose situation here. Like, he's developing with all these questions of roster, questions of coaching. It's like Mac, if he does great, I think Mac's going to get a lot of the credit. And if the wheels fall off, I don't think there's going to be a lot of fingers pointed at Mac this year.
Hey, Fitzy, pretty sure he stole that from me from Tuesday when we were sitting on the hill.
No, I've written this column 8 weeks ago.
I think there's a chance, and I think
He's
it's
such a
chat,
take snake. He is such a take snake. It's
He really
unbelievable.
is. But in all seriousness, I understand that we're exaggerating a little bit to make a point, but I do think, I mean, obviously there's inherent pressure on a quarterback, right? Especially
Always.
one that plays in Boston. But there is something to be said with, if Mac Jones doesn't play well, what do you think 95% of the fans are going to say? Well, this is what happens when you put a special teams coach as the guy who out and plays.
Yep.
This is not going to be on Mac Jones. It's going to be about, I mean, last year was all about the weapons. This year, it's going to be all about who's calling plays. They're setting them up to fail. That's going to be the narrative for a lot of people. And again, we're exaggerating. There's obviously pressure on Mac Jones, but I do think that if it doesn't go well for him, there'll be a lot of people with ready-made excuses for him.
Tin
Paul, I
Hat
wanna get
conspiracy.
back
Wait,
to something
real
you
quick.
said
Tin Hat
earlier.
conspiracy. Tin Hat conspiracy theory thing. Do you think there's any chance though that maybe Belichick is sort of organizing things this way so as to protect or shield Mac Jones a little bit during his year 2 development, or is he throwing him to the wolves?
Wait, how's he shielding him by giving him bad coaching potentially?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
shielding.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing.
That's
Okay.
a
I don't
terrible
think that's a
plan,
good
Bill.
thing.
Bill, give me your license. Look into this thing and tell me if your eyes still see the right letters.
Do you think you should take another driving test, Andy? I mean, my God, you're just fixated on the fact that he's age 70.
He's such an ageist. It's so upsetting.
Well,
Like, no-
he's been doing this to me for a long time.
Yeah,
too.
like our listenership cume is
12.32
getting younger,
is
which is good, apparently, probably for the sales department. But like Andy's aging out a lot of our veteran listenership, which is, I mean, that's a significant portion of Patriots Nation, Andy, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I've never understood why people get defensive when you bring up the idea that somebody who's 70 years old is where most people are retired and closer to death than birth.
Okay, but this is also not 1927, Andy. I can't smoke on an airplane. Actually, we don't even have airplanes in 1927, really. I don't wear a wool suit to a baseball game. We have telephones and Wi-Fi. It's a different time. 70 years old is what 50 used to be 80 years ago. So, no, I'm not concerned about Bill's age in the least.
You should be impressed with that one, Andy. 70 years old is what 50 used to be 80 years ago. That's an Andy Hart-like comment.
I do like the statement. I just
Yes.
don't
No, he's
know that
rubbing
it's
off on me.
necessarily
Damn.
I
accurate.
like that.
Paul, I
Fitzy,
want to get
I
back.
like that a lot.
I want to get back to something you said because
you,
I had
please,
it on
Paul.
here.
Okay.
The offense is getting all of the attention, all of it. Which side of the ball do you have more confidence in? Fitzy kind of touched on it, but like, do you think this can be a defensive-led team with Stephen? For those watching online, you can see that he's shaking his head vehemently. I believe is the description of that.
No, that's way strong.
I won't say there is any of the V
offense
words.
is a little bit better than defense right now, to me. Just
Really?
a little.
No vim, vigor, or vehemence, if you will, in the shaking of the
Correct.
head. You think the offense is incrementally better
I think
right now?
I think it has
More
a chance. I mean, obviously, if you just have no design to what you're doing, I mean, it's going to be hard to execute. But I do think with a year under their belts, the Bournes, Aguilars, Smiths, and Henrys, figured to be a little bit better this year than they were last year. Now, again, Andy's theory, they're not all going to be better, but you might get improvement from one or two of those guys. And Mac Jones should be better in year two. I think your offense has a chance to be okay. I don't think it's going to be, Kansas City or one of these high-powered offenses. I have a lot of concerns. They couldn't stop the run last year. They haven't been able to really stop the run consistently in a few years. What have they done to improve that?
Raekwon McMillan.
Okay.
Sam Roberts, LeBrian Ray.
Sam Roberts.
Like,
I wonder how they stop the run, and then if they're constantly in these third and short situations, how do you get off the field? Andy, this one will get you. Fred Kirsch, your former boss, and you know how positive he is. He makes Fitzy look like a hater.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times during the course of this offseason he's looking at the defense with the following comment: "I'm just hoping that they can force a punt." He has said that on the radio no fewer than a dozen times.
Well, to be fair, the last two games they played against the Bills, which was two of their last, 4 games that he saw,
it was,
they couldn't force a punt.
Well,
No, they couldn't.
I mean, obviously, that's why he says it.
And
No, I
Paul,
know,
that's why the
It's
running
likely
joke,
to be earned incentives. Like, it's
Right, like
in
the
NFL
running-
parlance.
the running joke during the NFL draft became, obviously everybody believed that Belichick wasn't happy about Jake Bailey's $4 million salary, so he would go get the punt god, Matt Ariza from San Diego State. He instead goes to Buffalo, of all places, so now he can flip the field on the Patriots or any other AFC East foe in a heartbeat because the guy's got a left leg cannon. But the joke became like, yeah, well, there's one guy the Patriots probably won't see this season, so I guess that's a good thing. But no, it's a terrible thing. And you're right. Like, look at the roster. You're not gonna. What are you expecting? Like a massive leap from Byron Cowart? Is this Bill Murray's year? Is Carl Davis going to rekindle the form he displayed for a couple games as an off the street fella in 2020? Like, no, the defensive line isn't that much different than it was last season, and that was an issue. You have to wonder though, the way Bill is reconfiguring the defense. Does he just expect everybody to go wide open like it's going to be Buffalo versus Kansas City in the divisional round?
I mean, I know there's a lot of teams like that, but there are still, potential opponents that they're going to have to see, like Baltimore and Tennessee, that don't play like that.
Tons of them. There's sneaky lot of teams that run the football in the National Football League. Baltimore, Tennessee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Like, you have teams that are going to try to Indy that are going to try to run the ball, and you lose. I know everybody was pissed off and thinks Dante Hightower was toast and lost a step and all those things, and certainly the Jonathan Taylor play against the Colts was probably the visualization of that feeling.
Yeah.
But he also was a key guy in the middle of your defense for whatever he had left in the tank. You lose him, you lose Van Noy, and I know you bring back Bentley, but Paul Perillo taught me very few things over the years. One of them was somebody has to make tackles. Somebody has to make catches, and somebody has to make tackles. And Jawan Bentley, to me, is a guy that, he plays inside linebacker, so he's going to tally somewhere between 80 and 110 tackles a year, regardless of where they are and whether they actually help the defense at all.
It's like, who are we talking to, Andy? Special teams. Was it Kyle Arrington when he was?
Oh yeah,
when he was first, like people were talking about all these tackles he was making. And then he said to Andy, well, I'm the gunner, and my job is to run down the field and tackle the returner. Like, if I can't do that, then I can't be out there.
Right.
I think in general terms, your inside linebackers are going to be your leading tacklers. They're going to make a lot of tackles, but do they make a lot of plays?
Right. Or do they make tackles 8 yards downfield, and it's now 2nd and 2?
In the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's been too often those tackles by the Patriots run defense have been too far down the field. And
they've been made by safeties, Paul. And that's like when a safety or a cornerback is your leading tackler on the team or your best tackler, that's an issue.
And you're going to see a lot of that, because I think you're right, Fitzy. You mentioned right at the top of the podcast. I think that's what Bill's going to do. He's going to flood the field with safeties. I think you're going to see 4 of them on, I don't know what percentage of plays, but a lot of them with Peppers, Duggar, Phillips, and McCourty. I think all 4 of those guys are going to be part of it. So at least 1 or 2 of those is going to be serving as a linebacker.
And he told, and that was part of the recruiting of Jabril Peppers. He told him that he was going to see the field a ton, and Peppers obviously wanted a paycheck and wanted to come learn from Belichick, or so we've been told. But he told Peppers, as he admitted during his first media avail, that Bill told him there were going to be at least 3 safeties on the field almost the entire season this year. So that was like the first hat tip as to or hand tip, if you will, as to what they were going to do defensively. Let's just get this one out of the way. We'll do a final viewer mail and questions if you've got them later on at 6 Rings Pod. Give us a follow. Thank you guys for listening in. Got Jumbo Hart, PFW, Paul Perillo from Patriots.com, and your old pal Fitzy here. Isabella Rosa Kaiser says, all right, what do you all think actually happens with Hightower this season? Does he come back, or is he Dunsky?
Talk about the players that are here.
All right, so Andy, you know how much I love to read between the lines of the Bill Belichick press conferences, and I just make stuff up.
Yes.
So I think we can close the door on Hightower personally, because prior to that comment that Andy just made about we'll talk about the players who are here, that was as glowing a Bill Belichick tribute for a player as you're going to get. Right. Those kinds of tributes from Belichick are generally reserved for guys that no longer are playing. Teddy Bruschi's Mr. Patriot. Troy Brown, I mean, he was the perfect Patriot. Now he's talking about this is one of the best linebackers that's ever been here. Now, he's complimentary of his players when they're here. Like, we've heard him talk like Patrick Chung. No one works harder. But that, to me, was a different kind of tribute. And I took that as he knows that Hightower's done.
Yeah. And I think we all agree, even though we're talking about questions at linebacker, I think we all agreed that Dante Hightower was kind of toast. And it wasn't just the Jonathan Taylor play. There were a lot of plays just in general. There were swing passes where it's like, oh, he's got how come he doesn't have the angle anymore? What happened?
There was a play in the Buffalo game, and I think it was the one at home the day after Christmas, where it was like the first drive of the game, maybe even the first play. It was a little swing to Devin Singletary that he dragged him about 8 extra yards down the sideline. I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, there were times where it was almost tough to tell whether he was making business decisions and like kind of monitoring how hard he went and how much contact. And then you're like, or is he just done? Can he not get there anymore? Can he not do it anymore?
That's the other part with Hightower, Fitzy, is he's not coming back for like $3 million. Like, he's going to make money if he was going to come back. But I think everything Bill said about him on Tuesday was accurate. I think he's been a tremendous player for the team. I kind of look at it as, if Hightower, Van Noy, and Collins all were back from last year, would that be better than what you have right now? Probably in this particular year. I think it's marginal.
Yeah.
But I think
Nominal
overall,
at best. Yeah.
long term, I think you're far better off finding out if any of these guys can play. Let Ronnie Perkins play. You took him in the 3rd round last year. See if he can be on the other side of Matthew Judon as an outside linebacker. See if Josh Uche is a little bit more than just a summertime hero. See if
he's a key piece of the puzzle.
Right. See if he can play. And I think you're better off finding out. Now, maybe they don't work. Maybe the guys that you picked aren't good and they're not better than the guys that you had, but you were only going so far with those veterans anyway. I think it's time to find out about some of the younger guys.
All right, so that leads us, Andy, into our next segment. Once again, at Six Rings Pod, we got PFW Paul at Jumbo Hart and your old pal at Fitzy GFY steering the ship today. As you mentioned some of those players, Paul, let's get into a little segment I like to call Bigger Impact. Impact. We don't have production on that one, so I just thought I would voice that like it was a monster truck rally. I'm going to throw a couple.
What's going on this week?
Right now. Oh,
They'll
is it
sell you
really?
the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
The Perillo Bone Crusher against Jumbo's Boat. It's on Sunday in the mud at Gillette. All right, so I'm going to throw a couple names at you with scenarios, and you tell me. We'll go first to you, Paul, then Andy, and we'll just flip the script there and thereafter. Who do you think will have the bigger impact? So your first one is Tyquan Thornton on offense or Jack Jones on the defense? Which rookie will have the bigger impact in 2022? Mr. Perillo.
I'm going to take Jack Jones on that. Andy and I, again, like-minded, were both pretty impressed with him last week on Monday. The athleticism, I think he's a guy that had some ability, had some off-field issues at USC. So I think that contributed to his draft stock a little bit. I know a lot of the write-ups that I saw on him, were just sort of evaluating the player, not necessarily where they thought he was going to go. But I think there's an opportunity for him to get in the mix. I don't think the secondary is deep. I don't think the cornerback position is very deep. Maybe it's deep at safety. And I think Thornton is going to have a hard time sort of cracking that top 4 at receiver.
Yeah, I'll go with Jack Jones. Part of it is opportunity. I think there are just so many question marks at cornerback and depth over there. The raw talent that he theoretically brings as one of the elite prospects coming out of high school after his issues. I'm just going to use that for the rest of my life. Like,
I mean, Andy, who among us hasn't been hangry enough to possibly rob a Burger King or just need to get
he thought it was
a Panda Express.
Yeah, he thought it was a sample. There were toothpicks.
They're so good.
And Thornton, I don't know, with like there's the one side, like we got somebody said Thornton, like that speed is nothing to sleep on. Like, I agree with that. 4.2 speed, but I don't know. First of all, he has the opposite of cornerback. They're not great, but he's got a bunch of bodies in front of him that are proven NFL talents that can be on the field and have been in this system other than Parker. And I think we all think Parker might be the most talented of the guys that are now in the system.
Yeah, I would look at Thornton and say, hopefully next year, you're going to have Jacoby Myers will be an unrestricted free agent. Mm-hmm. Nelson Aguilar will be an unrestricted free agent. If Thornton shows some promise, you have him, this is like the old Patriots. This is the way Bill used to do it. Have a guy ready to go right away and already comfortable in your system. I look at Thornton as, can he do like maybe Bethel Johnson did early in his career? You made a face, Fitzy, but if you think back to early Bethel Johnson, maybe it was 15, 20 catches, but there was like one every couple of games that was a key play, a key bomb, in Atlanta to help win a game, something like that. He had a huge touchdown in the Ice Bowl here against Tennessee.
That's right, and had a big catch against Matt Hasselbeck's Seattle Seahawks in 2003 to seal the game as well.
I'm not looking for Tyquan Thornton to go out and catch 75 balls, but can he catch 20 and average 20 yards a catch while doing it? I think that could give the offense a lift.
Oh, I would take that. If he has 20 catches and averages 20 yards a catch, that's a very good, impactful.
That's a huge impact.
Now, not compared to leagues.
Give me big plays.
I agree. Plays. Because I do think the bar is set. The way receivers are coming into the league the last 2 or 3 years, first, second round receivers putting up big numbers, Pro Bowl, all pro caliber. I think he has no shot to do that. I think his best case scenario is something that you said, maybe a little higher, maybe 30-something catches with a relatively high best case scenario. I said, eyebrow fella.
with a nice little 18, 19-yard YPC. Yeah, you know
Sure.
me. I would be all in and all over
That's
that.
the best case. Actually, the absolute best case scenario for him
Mhm.
is probably Nelson Aguilar with the Raiders before he got paid with the Patriots. 40-something catches
you're
for
going down the
800
road.
yards.
And
Huh?
eight
You're not saying
touchdowns.
now. You're saying down the road.
No, I'm saying right now, like everybody gets hurt and he's on the field.
Oh.
I think that's his best case scenario.
Oh,
Andy hit the Miller lights early this morning. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny you bring up Nelson of Aguilar, Andy, because your next bigger impact. Year 2 free agents looking to shine. Who has the bigger impact on the offense this year? Nelson of Aguilar or Jonnu Smith? Andy, you're up.
Can I have option C?
Neither was not an option.
Okay, I'll go Jonnu Smith just because I bought into the Josh McDaniels performance from last summer where they were investing in Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith may have more opportunities because of this lack of a fullback. What is he going to be? Can we get some mismatches out of the backfield? I've given up on the idea that Jonnu Smith will ever be worthy of the contract he signed or worthy of being one of the top few tight ends in the NFL. But dude's an athlete. We know dude's an athlete. We saw the one catch in Buffalo in the wind where he looked like the freaking Jordan symbol. Like there's a few of those. So maybe they find a way to get him the ball. I don't know.
I'll take Aguilar. And the reason I'm going to do that is this is no inside information or anything like that based on
breaking news. Hold on.
Time out.
Yep.
Based
when
on
Paul
my
says
address
this is
here,
no inside information,
it's
means
inside
emphatically
information.
trying to get you off the scent of inside information. Go ahead, Paul.
No one talks to me anymore. Ever since Andy left, no one comes to talk to me.
Our new guest, Deep Throw, has some inside
Right.
information.
I think you're going to see more of Aguilar in the slot this year, and maybe a little bit outside and inside, and give him some opportunities to use his speed coming across the field rather than strictly as a vertical guy. I think last year maybe a little bit miscast in that role. I think his production will be a little bit better. I'm not looking for a huge year, and all that said, there's always sort of those surprise moves that you don't see coming in training camp. It's not going to, I could see him, doubling his production from last year, and I could see him being like a training camp guy that gets traded.
Thanks,
for a
Ordway.
draft pick.
You covered it all there. Human tarp.
I
Paul Perillo.
feel like there's
Covered
a
all
chance.
of it, he says.
I just feel like there's a chance we see more of Aguilar in the slot.
Or he gets cut.
I've kind of accepted Jonnu Smith as what he is, Andy, because that's what he was in Tennessee as well.
Yeah, I know.
He's sort of this secondary guy. He's an athlete, but he's a 40 catch guy.
And he benefited from the play action heavy offense they ran, being the guy in the corner of the end zone to catch Ryan Tannehill's 50-50 balls. Yeah, with a 2,000-yard running back.
He was within sniffing distance of his career high last year.
Yeah. No,
this is what he is.
His numbers were
No, he
down.
was a 40-something catch guy. He didn't.
Yeah, and he caught like 40 balls.
He did.
Like I think it was 30-something, right?
His yards
the
and touchdowns
least
were way
impactful
down.
30-something
I totally agree.
In history.
I totally agree. I just don't think that the numbers are all that different than what he has done in Tennessee.
Hey, Fitzy, real quick. I know you're the master of ceremonies here.
Yeah.
How come you didn't put this one on the screen that says, give me Hart and Perillo 10-2 would be the best show in Boston?
I know. He ignored that one, Andy. That was
funny how that works.
I may have. I'll highlight said user John Tierney's other comment saying the Patriots will be 4-13 with the number 1 pick in the draft because he had to include an insult and/or a slight at our current employer, Andy. So I did not
out of my verbal description as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. So hence why it was not.
Can't you movie poster it and take out the part I want?
Listen, Andy, you're not looking at somebody who worked on Avatar. I'm not that good with the graphics. Okay, I'm doing the best I can. I changed Paul's lower third during the broadcast, so give me credit for what I'm doing. And the Six Rings train keeps on moving. Thank you very much, Andy, for that digression. You're next.
Hold on. I would just want to correct myself. I just looked it up, and Smith only had 28 catches. But I believe his career high was 41. So
see, that's why I said 8 touchdowns back in Tennessee.
And
now John Tierney has taken a shot at Bill Belichick. Jonnu Smith, great signing by senile Belichick. Obviously, John Tierney is a burner for Andy Hart. All right,
it was actually a typo. That's supposed to be a P.
All right, your next bigger impact. Second year New England.
delayed response.
All right.
That's just poor to me.
It's okay. Now you're going to lump him in with Belichick, and now everyone feels bad. And we're looking for big cocoons to put in the pool so we can all get younger and smarter. All right, you're second. It's a deep pull, Andy. I love 80s movies. All right, second year New England Patriot who did squat his rookie season. Who's going to shine this year? Ronnie Perkins or Trey Nixon, who's actually garnered a little bit of a positive buzz coming out of the OTAs?
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. I think Ronnie Perkins. We didn't see any of him last year, but I think there's a skill set there that could translate. And third round pick out of a good program in Oklahoma, I think there's a chance that he is, if not the starter, he is a key contributor on defense. I want to see him on the edge. The question for him, guys, will be, can he set the edge against the run? I think he can go forward and get, make some plays in the backfield, but can he consistently set the edge and help the run defense on the other side of Judon? And I think there's a chance he will. I don't really have much,
Andy, you've heard me say
for Trey Nixon.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it'd be great if he makes the roster or does anything as well, considering he was a seventh-round pick. Andy, I have said time and again, it would be incredible to watch Ronnie Perkins follow the Trey Flowers program where flashes quickly, basically gets redshirted, the Foxborough flu for his first year, comes out year two, and makes an impact. But I'm concerned. I don't think he's big enough. That's my biggest issue.
That's my concern too.
Yeah, I don't know what they want to use him as, but yeah, I don't think in that role, that evolution. But that's that whole group. I mean, I'd pick Perkins. I had hope for Nixon when he was drafted, kind of reading his injury history and some of the opportunity. But now I think he's way down the depth chart. I haven't seen anything to lead me to believe he's like coming up the depth chart or doing anything to earn more opportunities. Whereas with Perkins, there's an opportunity there. Like there is, I don't know who, I know everybody keeps talking up. The Belichick family is big on Josh Uche, but I think there's opportunities on that sort of umbrella of the defense, the edge players, the linebackers on and off the ball to, if you flash at all, if you make a few plays in practice and preseason, especially with Judon, apparently, can we touch on that quick, Paul? Bother you at all that Judon's not around?
I would like to know more information as to why he's not around.
I would too, but in general,
excused, not a big deal, possibly injured, rehabbing, on vacation. Maybe he and the family went to Sandals.
On vacation, I'm not
Sandals, not okay.
Not real good, not real high on
Club
that.
Med.
But dealing with an injury,
maybe not Sandals Club Med. Yeah, sure.
Is he here and we just don't see him? I need more information.
Is there a chance Ronnie Perkins turns out to be Jermaine Cunningham 2.0?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's not the answer the nation wanted.
No, but we haven't seen him play, Nick. So how do you know what exactly he is?
That's the big issue for me as well. Like he could be, if he's another Uche, it's like, oh, good, tons of like a big body who had a great college career, tons of potential, but quote unquote doesn't get it. If he gets shipped out of town on the Winovich Express in a couple of years, then obviously it's kind of a bust of a pick. Even if Mac Wilson plays well, it just wasn't a system fit, and maybe we'll never know exactly why Chase Winovich wasn't a great fit. Last one on bigger impact, gentle friends. On the way the AFC East shapes out in 2022, which has the bigger impact? Miami's free agent frenzy or the Jets' A+ draft?
Miami's free agent. Well, Tyreek Hill will be my answer. I think Tyreek Hill is one of the more transformative players in the sport of football. I think he literally makes everybody better based on the fear he instills in defenses. One man, just show up, and everybody. If you're Tua, it's easy now to throw short and your stats look good. If you're Jalen Waddle, who caught 100 balls as a rookie, it just got easier to be productive. Like I think that whole team. If you're Mike McDaniel and people aren't sure, like you've been with Shanahan and you're supposed to be good. Guess what? I think somebody like Joe Judge could call plays for the Miami Dolphins and find success. That was my example. I was going to say me or Paul, but hey, I'll say Joe Judge, another person who's never called plays before.
But they also signed that giant left tackle. They got Cedric Wilson. They got Chase Edmonds. They got Sony Michel. Like that's a lot. Like that's to benefit the run game, the pass game, all of it.
That's the food around the fillet. The fillet in the middle of the plate is Tyreek Hill.
No,
I'm here for the food analogies.
But to your point, Andy, with Tyreek Hill making things easier for Tua and for Jalen Waddle, he's going to make things easier for those runners too.
Right.
And the one thing that I think McDaniel really wanted to do was just get incredibly fast. And I think they got Mostert too. Did they not?
They did get Mostert. That's right.
And Edmonds. So you have a ball carrier and a guy who can get out of the backfield and catch the ball. Short throws for Tua, where you're looking for yards after the catch. Fitzy brought up Armstead at left tackle.
Right.
There's a chance. I mean, at least in the short term, there's a chance that Miami is significantly better. I do like what the Jets have done. But I think Miami's the answer to the question.
Fitzy's been gushing about the Jets draft since Thursday night.
I told you, like action movie style, Andy, they threw some oily rags at it, flicked a match, and then turned around and walked away like a triumphant hero at the end of the movie. Like they absolutely annihilated. I don't remember the last time.
You bought it. I mean,
I don't think I'm just buying the hype.
I heard
addressed every need they had.
Jets.
Well, the thing. See, I think everything Fitzy just said is right. I just think it's going to come down to these young quarterbacks, like we talked about with Mac Jones here. Can Tua be better than he's been?
No.
Can Zach Wilson be better than he's been? Can he be good? There's some talent around these guys now, so it's time to find out who can play.
Quads. The quads are big for Zach Wilson this year.
Oh, it's not going to be the quads. It's going to be not trying to make plays and run around the field like you're part of the Mountain West that he did at BYU.
It's funny, I saw some of these, these anonymous scouts that like to chime in on other teams' players.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw one anonymous AFC guy. I think they tried to keep him in the pocket too much. I think he's better off platform when he gets out. They don't let him do that enough. And I'm thinking to myself, did you watch the game against the Patriots? Anyway, I digress a little bit, but great story. The stories coming out of New England. Mac Jones, body transformation, much better shape. Tua, is doing this. He's a lot stronger. Zach Wilson worked on his quads. You don't see anything about Josh Allen.
No.
You don't see any
he's playing golf.
Any epiphanies
and kind of playing lousy golf too. Mahomes 100% carried them last night watching the match.
I thought there were too many commercials. Every time I put it on, I'd watch it for like 30 seconds and go to a break.
It was not great. It was not a great event. They all, for the portions I watched, they all hit the ball pretty poorly. Every camera shot was cut to hitting people in the head.
I heard Barkley saying that they're going to have to get him some football helmets for the fans. One of the times I put it on.
Well, his best line was, "We're going to kill somebody on live TV here."
Yeah. I did like Brady showing Josh Allen the ball with the Lombardi trophy on it. You ever see one of these?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a funny from Brady. He's not usually all that funny.
Well, he walked a fine line between the line that I generally walk, ball busting, and just being mean. Like his ball busting was right on the fine line.
His competitive fire still leads him to kind of be a dick all the time. Like Josh Allen kind of like with the basic move, like, hey, here's your draft pick on my golf ball. It's like, oh, that's like, hey, have you ever seen one of the, like, it's just like, oh, that's mean. Like he's already playing next to Mahomes, who advanced, even though Josh Allen played one of the greatest playoff games any of us have ever seen. Like Brady still loves being like, he gets off on being a dick.
Oh yeah. Yep. There's no question.
Really does.
He can't help it. He can't.
You know what? I don't mind it in the least. All right, guys.
I don't like what Brady does, but I kind of like that.
That was your first ever bigger impact. Let's get to a couple of viewer mail questions and wrap this pod up. Uncle Buck 617. Is there a player anywhere else that would potentially be available that you guys think would be worth trading for and helping the 2022 team?
Josh Allen. Was he not available?
I would say a guy, we talked about Perkins. Maybe he's not quite big enough for that kind of a role. What's the matter with bringing back former Patriot Trey Flowers?
What's his deal?
I don't know. Discuss.
Is this thing on?
Why is he? I don't understand why I thought he would be one of those immediate, like June 1st, whatever. Now he doesn't count against the compensatory, whatever that is. Like it'd be easier to sign him later. And also, Matt Patricia made him $55 million in Detroit. Why not come back where there's a fit, and you could also teach Uche and Perkins the ropes?
Paul, any chance he's like Brian Waters and there's like already a deal in place and he's just...
I've been wondering that. And I also, how I like to hear how people start to talk about different things. You brought up Judon not being here for OTAs. Does that worry you? After the Tuesday session and people giving all the updates, all the attendance reports, Isaiah Wynn, again, not here, right? Yep. People start saying, and I heard on your station, Andy Gresh bring up, might he be a guy that there's a trade in the works? And if you move on from Isaiah Wynn. You open up about $10 million in cap space. Does that pave the way for a guy like Trey Flowers to get signed? Maybe they're waiting to try to, create some space to comfortably get Trey Flowers on board. And maybe you're right, Andy. Maybe they already have, a deal sort of agreed to in principle, and they're just waiting. I don't know.
Yeah, because the creating money, I would say, well, if he's still available, like, how's his market? Like, does he have all these teams beating down his door, like, so he can say, I want X million? So it
I doubt it in June, right?
So, yeah. So my question is, like, maybe they've just got a wink, wink, nod, nod. Listen, we got a bunch of young players we want to see anyway. We don't really need you out here taking reps in OTAs and mini camp. We'll see you July 26th for the start of training camp. And
just like Matt Judon.
Well, Matt Judon, no. I'd like Matt Judon. He apparently he only gets paid half. Like, he gives you a half a season and a half an off season, and that's all he's good.
The guy did for that team last year on the field, and then tried to do off the field this past off season. And all you have are complaints, slights, and slanders.
All he wanted to do was mock his.
I was going to say, you can't give him any credit for what he tried to do this offseason. He didn't get a single guy.
Do not. There is no try.
Oh, please don't. You're the last person I will ever allow to do lousy impersonations of Star Wars quotes on this podcast, Andrew Hart.
Fitzy, I am your father.
Quiet you will be.
Okay, your next one, Chad Moore at Ryong901 on Twitter. Have Paul and Andy missed each other like the desert misses the rain? And I miss you. Also, Jumbo Hart, you have yet to really let everyone know your feelings on the Patriots moving away from the fullback position. Obviously, that's why he's projecting his emotions, Paul.
Yeah. Andy?
Well, I mean, I think when you've had the best, the rest don't measure up. So once Devlin walks away, what's the point of even having it? Right? Like that would be my takeaway. You tried to do the poor ass facsimile for a couple of years with Jakob Johnson. Now you don't need it. I'm okay with it.
Wow. That's very big of you. I'm proud of you.
Get Devlin to come out of retirement.
Andy, you have shown signs in your adult life what you didn't do much during your teenage years, and that's growth. So I congratulate you very much.
I saw that one coming.
You always do with Fitzy's jokes.
It's still delivered, though.
They're always
it was obvious. Paul, I got to tell you, honestly, it was a long walk around the block. You saw me turn in the hedge, and you were like, I'm here for it. It's okay.
Long road to grandma's, but we got there. We enjoyed the pie nonetheless.
We're going to try to get, according to John Tierney, the Hardo moment of the week sponsored whenever we have Paul on, as well as the joke coming around the corner at grandma's house. And your final one, Jimmy Perillo, no relation to Paul, at Hoodat1123 on the tweet machine says, hey guys, I'm worried about special teams. Could we please ask Bill to put Judge back there, or is this something I really need to worry about?
Well, based on last year, I'd worry about it because it was not good last year. Now, I think that was hopefully an aberration because very few teams give up 3 blocked punts in a year and have the kind of game-altering penalties and things they had last year, especially if you invest in it. I'm not real, Paul. Cam Accord.
Yeah.
Like, he's taken some pot shots. Like, I think a lot of people think he should have been fired. And I don't totally dismiss that. I think there are a lot of teams. If you put forth the season you had on special teams last year across the league, we see a lot of special teams coaches get canned. But I also don't think he's like a clown show coach, bro. Like,
well, I always go back and forth in those things. Like, well, you got 3 punts blocked. Like, I'm pretty comfortable in the fact that they don't watch film and say, hey, I think it was Jakob Johnson on one of them. Hey, Jakob, right here. If they show in this A gap right here, just go the other way and let him go through because he probably won't be able to block the punt anyway. Like,
right.
Brandon King, if they're lining up for a field goal in Indianapolis, just jump offside, give him another chance. Like, I think we focus on the coach when there are mental mistakes made and physical mistakes made, and it's all about coaching. And listen, it's a tough business. It's a result-oriented business. They had 3 punts blocked. I think they had a field goal blocked. Countless penalties on special teams. They had a bad year on special teams. And ultimately, that's the responsibility of the coach. I get that. But I kind of agree with Andy. I think some of those things, that's an aberration. And I also thought it was interesting to listen to Belichick talk on Tuesday just about how much special teams have been de-emphasized with the lack of returns in the kicking game, the punter's expertise being so good. Now let's see if he follows through with that and maybe keeps fewer guys that only play special teams, because I haven't seen any indication that he has acted like special teams have been de-emphasized over the last 5 years.
Right.
And yet at the same time, the Patriots take two shorter cornerbacks who both could be return specialists as well, and could re-energize your punt return and your kickoff return game if those actually factor back into the game.
Right.
Or they may also give off Will Height and Wheatley vibes from 2008.
Yeah,
so who the hell
Marcus
knows?
Jones, I think, will be a dynamic punt returner.
Yeah.
Well, possibility anyway. But that's the only one of the special. I think you could still get something out of punt returns because teams still punt. Not all punts are
Not
except
who the
Buffalo.
Patriots.
Except Buffalo. And we have gone
Right.
full circle with that one, Mr. Perillo. Thank you,
Right.
everyone. The
But
joke has landed.
It's not all plus 50 punting. You're going to have opportunities to return punts.
Harry Hardo over here. That's the Harry Hardo. It's not all plus 50 punting.
Why are you such a douche? Seriously, what is wrong with you?
Keep it clean. Family show.
That's all right.
Clean. You can
Andy,
say that on your air.
Yeah,
Come
you can
on.
totally say that's fine. Andy, notice I also didn't swear the entire podcast. So there. Are you happy?
Yeah, I am. You shouldn't. You've
Andy
been a little
usually
dirty.
drops F-bombs on these.
Yeah, well, on occasion.
No, I don't know the audience. We're live. We're on various
All
platforms.
right.
I
Don't
know.
worry about it. That's at PFW Paul Perillo, the OG of Patriots grumpiness. You can read his musings at patriots.com. You can listen to him on Patriots Unfiltered Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from noon to 2. And hopefully we'll see you down the stadium this year. Of course, part of the podcast at Jumbo Hart, the gridiron grump himself. And I'm your old pal, Nick Stevens, a.k.a. at Fitzy GFY. Gentlemen, any final thoughts before we punt and wrap up?
Just a preview. Next week, Paul and I will be on hand at Gillette Stadium for 3 days of mandatory minicamp, right, Paul Perillo? So
Yeah, absolutely.
we should see Judon and N'Keal Harry and some of these other people that we haven't seen yet, and see if
Do we really have to see N'Keal Harry next week?
Well, you might not. I mean, I guess he could just be forcing his way out of town. But also, Paul, I'm hoping we see a little bit more digestible, competitive type action than we saw the other day, which was conditioning, and that's it.
Yeah, the Tuesday practice was really scaled back. But yeah, what is it? 7th, 8th, and 9th? June 7th, 8th, and 9th, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll have an opportunity to see some stuff. The attendance to me is interesting as anything. Like Isaiah Wynn, like I said, all of a sudden people started talking about, might he not be part of the 2022 season? Be interesting to see if we see him at minicamp or if he's just injured or something. I mean, he was hurt at the end of last year, so
That's not good
as
either.
simple as that.
No,
That's not good either, though.
No,
Not
none
great,
of it is
Bob.
good. None of it is good.
No.
Not great. We'll look forward to you guys and the observations next week. Multiple Six Rings pods coming from and or just after the mandatory minicamp. Thanks so much for listening once again. Please rate, review, subscribe, the whole thing wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Pods, Spotify, Podbean, etc., etc. For Paul, for Jumbo, for the not present Chris Scheim, our producer extraordinaire, and me, your old pal Fitzy, this has been another edition of Six Rings and Football Things. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great weekend, and let's go Celtics. Bye.